Hey everyone! Um, Quick note before we start for those who are here already. Please do me a favor and let me know if my fan is too loud. I see some comments in the chat that it's pretty warm. It's fairly warm here too. So yeah, please let me know if you can hear it. But otherwise, hi. Welcome to another. Don't hear it. Fantastic. Um, Welcome to another session of the Bad Website Club responsive web development bootcamp. Gosh, I'm sorry, my brain ain't braining. Hope we're all doing well. Hope we had a great session of variables yesterday. I love variables. I'd love to hear your thoughts on it while we get started. So let's get started. If you're hopping on for the first time, hi, my name's Carmen. Etta, Jess, and I are doing this free web development bootcamp. Don't worry, you haven't missed a thing. Everything's recorded on our YouTube channel. If you go to youtube.com/@badwebsiteclub, you'll find everything there. I haven't updated the playlist this week. I'll do that. Discord channel is here too. If you go to discord.gg/KVU, that's all caps, lowercase m, and then all caps VXA, you'll find conversations, questions being asked, and so on and so forth. The schedule for the bootcamp is at badwebsite.club/bootcamps/spring-2026. And by joining this bootcamp, I need you to know that you are agreeing to abide by our code of conduct. If you haven't read it yet, go to badwebsite.club/code-of-conduct. And what it is essentially is acting. We expect our learners to act in a way that is exemplary of how they would want others to behave. So please, if you see anything out of sorts, let us know and we'll handle it. So yeah, let's see how folks are doing. It's some folks are warm, some folks are cold. That's how weather is, huh? It's very warm here in Vienna. So I hope, like I said, the fan is not loud, but it seems like folks can't hear it. Let's talk about CSS, huh? Yeah. Today is a big one. We're doing CSS Grid. If this is your first time hearing of it, we're going to start from scratch. We're going to be spending 2 days on this. So because there's a lot to cover, and there's also a pretty involved lab or workshop for the Build a Magazine one. So don't worry. Lots to cover, but we're here in this together. So let's go over what oh no. No, that's your fan, not mine. You couldn't get through all the reading. Don't worry, that's why we're doing it together. It is a lot. And we're just going to cover as much of it as possible today. We might go a little bit over time, and I apologize in advance. Please, at any point, if you have questions, ask. And yeah, we're going to be doing what is CSS Grid, how do you create flexible grids with the FR unit, which we touched on last week, how to create gaps, how to repeat track listings in a grid layout, difference between an implicit and explicit grid, how to use the min-max function, how do the grid column and grid row properties work, and how to position items on the grid using grid template areas. So let's just get right into it. Starting with what is a grid and how does it differ from Flexbox? So you might remember I mentioned this when we talked about Flexbox last week. CSS Grid is a tool for us to be able to define two-dimensional layouts in CSS. And it's done in a grid, right? So we, just like we do with Flexbox, we declare something a container to be a grid using the display attribute with the display property set to grid. Then what we need to do is set the layout. So in this case, for example, we're setting up grid template columns. So this is going to be a grid made up of 3 columns. So every row is going to have 3 columns. X, Y, and Z. No Z, just X and Y. And there's going to be 20 pixels between each element in the grid. Now, here on Free Code Camp, we can see how this would look. So I'm just going to zoom in, take this code here and run with it to HTML editor. All right, we'll zoom in, folks. I need you, please, to let me know if the size of the code is okay. Otherwise, I'll make it larger. So that's a bit small. I'm going to make it a tiny bit larger. Yeah, that looks better. I wish I could make this smaller. Anyway, so we've got a container here with 6 divs in it, right? Items 1 through 6. By default, a div uses display. What is it? Display. Oh my gosh. Block. Sorry, my brain is resetting. It's this warmth. Anyway. So display block. But if we want to turn this into a grid, we can use the display grid attribute, which, if you notice, didn't change anything. But if I right click here and open up my dev tools, something on my computer is making a noise. I'm going to turn that off. Apologies. Okay, so let's look at my containers. Now take a look. See, can you see the purple lines? Those are displaying the borders of the grid. Baking and NC is saying you can make borders to see the grid. Not necessarily. You can actually see. No, you totally can make borders, but you don't have to, because the dev tools actually show the grid. You see that purple line around it? And in fact, if we go to layout, this is so cool. Yeah. So in the dev tools, if I go to layout and then check this box, I can see each item in the grid. How cool is that? But of course, it's a bunch of rows. Not really helpful. So let's type in grid. What's it? Display. Is it columns? I think. 1FR, 1FR. Let me see if I got that right. No, it's not grid display columns. What was it again? See, I don't know this stuff by heart. Grid template columns. My mistake. Template columns. Okay. Y'all are not ready for this because it's wicked cool. Okay, so there's my container. Check this out. Where did my cool lines go? Hang on. They looked awesome. Where did they go? Oh, hang on. I'm got the wrong thing selected. So styles, I should be on the container. What? Why did it disappear? It looked so good. Sorry, folks. But yeah, all I'm trying to say is you can hover over your grid in the dev tools to take a look at what the grid layout is. Now, let's take a look at this one again. Come back here, look at our grid. Now, you can see what each item is laid out like. Now, watch what happens when I add the gap. Grid gap, 20 pixels. And I go back to my dev tools. Look at that, look at that. Oh my God, that's so cool. You can see the gap laid out between each item. And notice that by defining grid gap, it automatically made both the horizontal and vertical gap 20 pixels. So this is the essentials of making a CSS grid, right? Notice we didn't have to write any styles for the items themselves, just the grid. Now, as I've said several times, the biggest difference between Flexbox and grid is that Flexbox is one-dimensional and a grid is two-dimensional. And really, the best way to think about it is that I will, Mel. The best way to think about it is that Flexbox adjusts itself according to its content, right? Whereas grid says, no, we want a very specific layout for this. And we're going to see more today what I mean by that. So Mel's asking, can I remove the elements, see if the grid stays or if the area shrink to 0? Well, first I want to know what you think. So I will now remove the items. Now I need to find my div. Where's my div? My one password? No, here we go. Yeah. Document, HTML, body, div container. Cool. So this container, 247 pixels wide, because that's the size of its container. So the container div is as wide as its body, but no height. Why? Because it has no content. There's no gap either because there are no items for there to be a gap between. Hope that's clear. So how often are flexboxes used within grid elements? It's a bit of a philosophical question, I suppose. Just think of it this way. Grids are used to be able to align stuff in a two-dimensional layout, like say a gallery, or I don't know, just a square of stuff. Can you have flex boxes inside it? Yes, absolutely. Say if you wanted to center a div, remember? So how often? Often enough. Can I specify the area of a grid such as its height and each row? Oh, its height and each row's height. Hang on. Can I specify the area of the grid such as its height and each row's height without elements inside? For example, if your website only has the body, but the grid has an area for the head. Mel, I'm sorry, I'm not understanding the question. If your website only has the body, but the grid has an area for the head. Oh, the header. The body will leave space for the header. I'm so sorry. I'm really not understanding the question. So if there are no rows, the grid ain't going to display nothing. Right? If there's no content, the grid is not going to show anything. But of course, using CSS width and height, you can specify a width and height for the grid, but doesn't that kind of defeat the purpose of using a grid? You could have the container, the container that the grid is in, have a limited size. Maybe I'm not understanding the question. I'm so sorry. Could you try rephrasing it, please? Oh, wait, I just got to answer. If you mean designing the layout before adding the content, you absolutely can. Oh, body starts at line 3 and spans 3 rows and all columns of a grid with 10 rows. Yes, Edda. Thank you, Mel. You both made, yes, you can absolutely, I don't think we're going to cover that today, but you absolutely can. I'm so sorry I misunderstood the question. Okay, so what is the main difference? Let's do some Q&A. We got a lot of stuff to cover. What is the main difference between CSS Grid and Flexbox? Grid is newer than Flexbox. Grid is 2-dimensional, while Flexbox is 1-dimensional. Grid only works with columns, Flexbox only with rows. Grid is only for desktop layouts, Flexbox is for mobile. People are saying number 2. That is correct. In the CSS Grid temp example provided, what does 1FR, 1FR, 1FR mean in the grid template columns property? Does it mean create 3 columns each 1 pixel wide? I got this. Create 3 columns, each taking up 1/3 of the available space. Create 1 column that's 3 times as wide as the others, or create a single column divided into 3 equal parts. Talking is hard today. Please bear with me, folks. So what do we think? Or, oh, did people already answer? I can't follow. People are saying number 2, so we'll go with that. 4. No, so each of these fractions, we're going to learn this, is 1 fraction of the grid. So for every fraction, just another way that 4 has been worded? No, because it's creating 3 columns, not 1 column. Bear in mind, it's not a single column. It's 3 columns. Exactly. So you're saying, right, and a third equals a third equals a third. Yes, but the semantics of the word column is important here. No, don't apologize. I said, please don't apologize. You're right. It's divided into 3 parts. The width of the grid is divided into 3 parts, but each of those parts is a column. It's not a single column. It's confusingly worded. So which statement about CSS Grid is true? It can only be used for desktop layouts. It requires JavaScript to function properly. It allows for precise placement of items in both rows and columns. It automatically adjusts layout based on content size. So you're saying if it were a row divided into 3 equal columns, it would be the same, or maybe? Not sure I understand. Sorry. Yes, precise. Thank you. It's number 3. Check our answers. We did good. Let's pat ourselves on the back. Pat. We got a lot to cover, so let's keep going. So let's cover the FR unit. We've seen it a little bit already. So in this grid, we've got 4 items. Now let's look at the grid. The grid is a grid. Each template column is 25% of the width. The gap is 15 pixels. Background color is dark gray. But each column is dark slate blue. And this is kind of answering your question. Since fractions are flexible, is the gap value more dominant than the fraction? So, wait, the gap can be 50%? Oh, Mel, no, really? I think I hate that. So you're saying grid gap 50%. Oh, dear Lord. This is cursed. Where is it? Okay. So the gap is 50% of the column and row. No, it's not broken. It's just cursed. Deeply cursed. Take a look. The gap, if you divide this into quarters, the gap is 2 quarters wide, i.e. half, and each item is a quarter wide. So yes, it does take precedence over everything. Is it overflowing? No, it's not. The gap takes precedence, right? We're stating an explicit gap here. Will the rows squish their elements? Yes, because we're specifying a gap. But it is still 1FR, 1FR. Well, yeah, here, 1FR, 1FR. That's what we wanted. Each item is 1 quarter. Let me come back here. So, yeah, it just takes a fraction. So here we can have 4 elements on each column. If I come back here, this is going to be super cursed. Oh, did you? I'm sorry. Did you say 1? Oh my gosh, you did. I'm sorry. Give me a sec. All right, let's do something messed up here. Okay. So let me bring this up. So the gap is 50% of the container, which it does overflow now because it's super wide. But notice that the grid is so overflowed that the 2 fraction still gets squished. Okay? It should try. Okay, let's keep going. Sorry, got us super distracted. So what is the purpose of grid template columns property in a CSS grid container? It sets the color for the columns. It sets the size for the columns. It sets the gaps for the columns. It specifies the number of rows in the grid. Mel, I want to address what you said. I kind of hate this. I foresee many bugs. Let me ask you something with my hand on my heart. Do you really foresee a scenario where you're going to set the gap between the items to be 50%? Because that would, I think that's the source of bugs, frankly. Grid is super powerful, but don't get me wrong, I am all for throwing wacky numbers at a thing and seeing if it breaks, but yeah. So, sorry, I don't think anybody answered this for me. What is the purpose of the grid template columns property in a CSS grid container? Color, size, gap, or the number of rows? Not everyone at once, please. Gosh, it's so warm. Number 4? No, not the number of rows. We're not specifying the number of rows. Remember, we're specifying the grid template columns. It is the second one because remember, you're setting the size and the amount of columns. So, how does the fraction unit in CSS Grid differ from using percentages? FR units create overflowing containers, whereas percentages do not. FR units allocate space based on the available space in the container, whereas percentages take up a percentage of the available space. Fraction units are used for creating flexible layouts, whereas percentages are not. Or there is no difference between FR units and percentages. What do we think? Thank you. And let's keep moving. What happens when you use grid template columns 1FR, 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 1FR in a CSS grid layout? Container will have 4 columns, each taking up 10%. The columns will stack vertically. The columns will be evenly spaced, but their sizes will remain fixed. The columns will take up equal fractions of the available space, with the size adjusting automatically when the container resizes. Number 4, thank you. Oh, looks like we got an incorrect one. Let's see. Aha. I love how community oriented y'all are. Hi, Sanak. Good to see you. How does the FR unit in CSS Grid differ from using percentages? Let's look at it again. So it's not that FR units overflow in containers, whereas percentages do not. Did I? Oh, my bad. FR units allocate space based on the available space in the container, whereas percentages take up a percentage of the available space. You're right. You said 2 and I clicked the first one. That's my mistake. There we go. Pat, pat. Let's keep going. We still got a lot to cover. Okay. Next up is grid, the gaps between items in the grid. And we've already seen that a little bit by using the, where's the gap property? Where is the gap property? Oh yeah. So let me restore this here. And I will set the gap to be 10 pixels. Okay. Perfect. Okay. So let's look at our grid. The first and third item of the column are one fraction. The second one in the row is going to be 2 fraction. However, the grid between each item is 10 pixels. The gap between each item is 10 pixels, both horizontally and vertically. If we want to specify only the gap between columns, we can specify a column gap. So if I come back here, we're going to see that now we only have a 10 pixel gap between the columns. If we want this to be specific for rows, then we use row gap. Same thing, right? So, oh, by the way, asking questions is fantastic. Please keep asking questions. I love it. Yeah, that's how we specify a row gap. We can use, I believe, let me check, 10 pixels, 20 pixels. I hope I'm right. Yes. So we can use gap to be a shorthand for both column gap and row gap. So first we do the row gap, 10 pixels, and then we have the column gap, 20 pixels. So that's how you do gaps in Grid. By the way, with gap works for both Flexbox and Grid, which is handy. I think that's it. No, I am too far ahead. Here we go. Yep, we did gaps. So what is the purpose of the column gap property in a CSS grid layout, please? It sets the space between grid columns, defines the size of grid items, defines the number of columns, or sets the space between grid rows. What do we think? Oh, Mel, that's such a good question. I'll tell you right away, gap, but I'll explain why in a moment. First, I want my answers. Thank you. Next, what happens if you use the normal value for the column gap property under a grid layout? Set to 10, -1, 14, or 0. I actually don't know this off the top of my head. So I'm curious to know who did the reading. Number 4, thank you. Which of the following is the correct way, which of the following is the correct property used as a shorthand for creating gaps between rows and columns? Gaps and spaces, space, row gap, column gap, or gap? Gosh. And people are saying number 4 again. Thank you. So we did good. Pat, pat. Let's next go to Mel's question. Which do you prefer, gap or margin, when spacing flex elements? Now, is it okay if I do this with grid? No, you want flex. Let's do flex. Display flex shouldn't change much. Don't need this. We do need this. Okay. So we're back in a do with both. I mean, it's the same. I'll show you. So gap is 10 pixels. Okay. So the grid has 10 pixels between each. Now you might be thinking, okay, well, yeah, I could do a gap, but do I prefer doing margin? So this is how we would do it with a margin. We would say for every item, so container div, and we'll set the margin to be 10 pixels. This is what you had in mind, I would assume. Not too different in concept, right? Because, well, first of all, you can't see it in the console for the container. However, for each item, you have 10 pixels to the right. So my question to the general question is this the same as gap? No, like you said, Mel, the last margin. Not the same thing. In my opinion, that's messy. And I don't mean the football player. I mean, it doesn't look good. It's not doing what it's meant to do, unless you want to have a 10 pixel right margin. Same would happen with a grid, by the way. Let's go back. There we go. So container div margin right 10 pixels. It adds the margin, but again, it don't look good because item 3 now has an extra 10 pixels to the right. I hope that answers the question. So if I'm adding a gap between, if I'm adding pixels between items, I want to go with gap. What's next? Track listings. So, oh, this is great. So we can use the repeat function as a shorthand to write out complex grid layouts. What does that mean? Okay, so we have grid template columns, 1FR, 2FR, 1FR. Let's change this to be 1FR across the board. I'm also going to change, I'm going to give these a background color so they're a little easier to see. Does that look good? Let's add a gap of 10 pixels. Grand. Okay, so we can obviously write grid template columns 1FR, 1FR, 1FR. A shorthand for this is using the repeat function, saying how many times do we repeat this layout and the layout itself. So this is the same as 1FR, 1FR, 1FR. This is great because I can just change it here very quickly to be 2 and 1. This is a bit like repeating linear gradient behaving the same way. Similar, yeah. Similar concept. And they can be more complex. Let's say we want to have, wait a minute, 1FR, 2FR. You can add more complex layouts in here too. Okay, so twice, each column is going to be made up of twice this. So this here is the same as writing 1FR, 2FR. I swear I can do this. 1FR, 2FR, 1FR, 2FR, right? 1FR, 2FR, 1FR, 2FR. I can do it 3 times. Now it's too small, but if I widen it, it's back. 1FR, 2FR, 1FR, 2FR, 1FR, 2FR. So it gives us some flexibility. You might, I bet some of you are like, okay, but what's the best practice? You already know what I'm going to say. There is none. Go with what works best for you. Some people prefer this, other people prefer the other way. Cool. I think that covers the whole thing, right? Does grid template rows do the same thing with repeating? If so, why choose one over the other, column or row? I'm going to throw that question to the chat, not because I'm lazy. I have opinions. Why would you do columns first and rows second? Here's a hint. What direction do you read stuff in? Because I think Japanese is one of the few languages where you read from top to bottom. No, I think Chinese as well. Could be wrong. Yep, viewport. That's a good reason. I will move down. That depends on where you are in the world. I couldn't agree more. I think rows would be easier to think through if you've done TRTD, since you can map it to be the same layout. I mean, there is a reason you can do both. You know what you could do is share with the group an equivalent mapped out with grid template rows. There is no preferred way. That's just a reason I think. So let's do some Q&A. Oh gosh, time is going so fast. So, which of the following is the correct syntax for repeating track listings? Is it repeat this, multiply this, or repeat sections? While you all answer that for me, let's take a look at this. Grid template row, 1FR, 1FR, 1FR. Yeah, but that's for 3 rows, not for 3 columns. We're specifying columns here. Me Can't Spell says, how have I been following along and still lost? Me Can't Spell, please do me a favor and tell me what you're not understanding or what is making no sense, and I'd love to help you. I need an answer for this, though. Which of these is the correct syntax? Is it repeat this, multiply, repeat sections? Sinak, don't worry. Remember, there's always a chance to come back later. Today, I will put in the answer myself. The syntax for doing repeating tracks is repeat the number of times and the layout you want to repeat. Thank you. What is the primary benefit of using repeat function in the grid template columns property? Allows repeating column definition more concisely and reduces redundancy, makes the code run faster, it leads to error-free code, or it makes web pages more responses. Y'all are too warm. I think we're all melting here. Number 1, that's correct. Thank you. What is the result of setting grid template columns to repeat to 20 pixels, 1FR? Oh my gosh, am I going to have to read all of this? It creates 4 columns all set to 1FR wide. Create 2 columns where each is set to 20 pixels wide. It creates 4 columns where the first and third are 20 pixels wide and the second and fourth are 20 pixels wide. It creates 3 columns where the first and second are 20 pixels wide and the third is FR wide. It is not, friends. Look at this again. Repeat 2. So it's going to repeat 20 pixels unifar twice. So it's actually the third option. Let's try it out so we can make sure. So 2, 20 pixels unifar. Let's make this nice and wide. Great. So 20 pixels, 1FR, 20 pixels, 1FR. So 4 columns. First and third are 20 pixels. The other 2 are 1FR. There. We did it. Folks, this is a lot to take in at once, and I don't expect you to completely grasp it in the first try. What I highly recommend is grabbing an HTML editor and messing around with it. Is it possible to prevent the content overflowing the gap? Something like no shrinking. Is it possible to prevent the content overflowing the gap? Something like no shrinking. I'm not sure I understand the question. The whole point of 1FR. So hang on. Let's start over. The whole point of FRs is to take up the available space, right? Is the 1FR part of the whole 100% or part of the max minus 40 pixels? Okay, we've got 2 lines of questioning going on here. Let's address the first part. Is it possible to prevent the content overflowing the gap? I'm not sure. It might be something called content contain. Listen, a grid is only as big as you make it, right? So hang on. Let's do something cursed. 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Okay. Now let's say we want to make this 3 rows. So 3 rows would mean 4 columns, right? But let's entertain this. Grid template rows. Can I do this? I've actually never done it with rows. Okay, never mind. We're sticking with columns. Placing a dinner tape on top of a chessboard, it will always overflow. Yes, but let me answer that. Let me ask you this, Mel. What is the chessboard and what is the dinner plate? That's what I'm not following. If you tell me what that is, then we can move on. We can, like, look, okay, let's give, oh, great. Okay. Boo, Freud is terrible. Okay, so item 6 is a dinner plate. And I'm going to say this now, Mel, I don't know why you want to do this. I don't say this condescendingly. I don't say this critically. What I'm about to do hurts me to do. So, dinner plate. Height 400 pixels. Width 400 pixels. The whole point of the grid is to have responsive sizing, or min-max, which we're going to see in a bit. Thank you, Anna. So, all right, here it is, comma, I guess. No, but see, Mel, my element is much bigger than the grid space I put in. But no, I totally understand why you would want to test edge cases, but what I'm trying to do is like challenge the notion of why do you have elements of specific sizes in the first place? Because you can tell a grid, hey, I want this element to take up more space. But why is that why are you setting a specific size for that element in the first place? If not being for the whole point that an element in a grid is going to conform with the size of the grid. You know what I mean? Because yeah, you can have it be like this and it'll like override the size of the row. But again, the question becomes like, there are ways to do this with grid template rows that doesn't break it. And sure, like we can have, what am I doing here? What is it? What is it? Over, no. Here we go. Body, overflow, hidden. Now it doesn't scroll. You can't scroll it anymore. So you can totally do that. So yeah, I'm not trying to be difficult. I really want to challenge the part of like, the whole point of the grid is, and the whole point of these layouts in the first place is to not be worried about the size of an element. You let your grid control the size of the item. So try to think of it try to think of it like the other way around. I like what Sinak is saying. In the ideal case, content controls minimum size, grid keeps things equal, and max size is controlled by the parent container up to the viewport. I think overflow meant item gap item 2. What if the color cyan is for columns? And Abyss Walker, I really appreciate what you're trying to write here, but I don't know what it means. This will be an excellent thing to bring to Discord. Just based on the or if you have like a link or something to like an example. Maybe I'm just not understanding what you're trying to ask, and I'm so sorry. Tell you what, sit on that, come back at me with more. Like, asking questions is fantastic. But I got 10 minutes to go through 4 more topics, so let's keep going. So, difference between an implicit and an explicit grid, right? So far, when we're letting the grid set its sizes and the number of, using FRs to create those, we're creating what's called an implicit grid, right? The difference between that and an explicit one is when we specify a specific layout, right? So here, for example, we say, hey, each column is 100 pixels. That's the explicit in an explicit grid. And here's the difference. Just gonna drink some water first. So when we're writing an explicit grid, we're using grid template rows and grid template columns to to explicitly say, this is how big you are. With an implicit grid, we're using grid auto rows and columns to automatically fill out the content of the grid. I hope that makes sense. We can okay, I'm getting explicit instructions now. Okay. So, columns template is 10 pixels, 1 FR, 1 FR. As in what is, okay, that looks good. I think this will clarify the cloud, as in what is the text in the grid overflows through gap. Oh my gosh. That's what you mean, as in it'll overflow. Oh, well, sorry. Y'all, sorry. Well then, overflow X hidden. There we go. Doesn't overflow anymore. Where's item 2? Huh? Excuse me? Where did item 2 go? What? Hang on. You are too big. Let me get rid of that. There we go. Okay. Yeah. So, come back here. So, yes, if it overflows, I understand now. Sorry. You know, it's really difficult to understand when you've got like a bunch of people talking to you at once. Right. So, what do we do about the overflowing? Well, first of all, listen, I don't want to judge, but I don't know why you're putting text in a 10 pixel wide container. But if it's a concern and you really want to have that, that's what overflow hidden is for. Ta-da! Sorry, that's what you all meant. So yeah, the size of the div is going to prioritize the sizing assigned to it by the grid. Oh gosh, sorry, I did not understand that at all. You all like your edge cases. I love it. And I think that's great. So, which properties control the columns and rows created implicitly by the browser in a CSS grid layout? Columns and rows, colon row, implicit columns, or grid auto columns? What do we think? Gosh, we are running out of time. I'm sorry, we're gonna have to stay back a bit. Tell you what, I will. Oh, people are already answering. Fantastic. So, which properties are used to define explicit rows and columns in a CSS grid layout? Explicit in this one. So, row NFR, grid explicit rows, grid template rows, or grid gap? Which one is it? Sweaty work here. 3, thank you. Which of the following code examples is the correct way to set 2 explicit columns? So, grid template columns 100, 100. Grid template columns 100, 100, 110. Grid template rows, what do we want? 2 explicit columns, 100, 100. Or grid column start 100, 100. Now, since this is so much to scroll through, I'm going to skip a little bit ahead. To set 2 explicit columns, we need 100, 100 grid template columns. Check your answers. Looks good. Pat. Okay, we have 5 minutes. No, I'm kidding. All right, so now we're on min-max, which was mentioned before, but essentially min-max allows us to specify a range for the size of a grid track, right? Because we might want to have fractions, we might want to have a minimum and a maximum. This is going to actually help us with this item thing. Check this out. So let's say we want this to be min max, a minimum, I don't know, 30 pixels, maximum 1 FR. Now watch this. The maximum is 1 FR, right? No, definitely not RPG min max. Now watch what happens as I make this smaller. It's going to reach a, oh gosh, wait, can I make this bigger? I'm sorry, this is going to be a mess otherwise. Let's make this min-max 100 pixels or 1 FR. Okay, now watch what happens to the first column as I make it smaller. Right now it's 1 FR wide, right? So, but once it gets to 100 pixels, watch what's going to happen to item 2 and 3. Item 1 is going to be like, I'm not going any smaller than this. So this is helpful for preventing things like that overflow. And this is super flexible. If we want the minimum to be 1 FR, but the maximum to be 2 FR, why is that not working? Did I misspell it? Maybe that doesn't work. Ignore what I said. Say we want the maximum to be 100 pixels, the other way around. Why is my grid broken? Min, max, 1 FR, 100 pixels. Huh? Do I have a typo? I'm going to refresh. Did I hit enter? Oh, there's an extra space. Oh, that's so cursed. No. Is there a way you don't have to specify the min-max to tell it stop when you reach the content size? Stop what? Growing or shrinking? Because that's how min-max works. It needs to have a minimum or a maximum. I'm really sorry. Could you please clarify the question? Right. So so you want to specify a minimum, right? I'm going to fix this real quick. Keep talking, Mel. Grid, template, columns, 1 FR. Does that work? Why is the grid broken? Yo, what? Oh no. What did I do? I broke the grid. We're starting over. I don't want to spend our time with this. Mel, what do you mean? Because I'm sorry, I don't quite understand. Don't need this. So you might not know the exact size of the element's content. For example, a P element can wrap. So the size will change determined by the longest word. Right. Okay, carry on. What's the question? Why is my grid completely? Was it not working because the min size should be bigger than the max one? Probably, but it's not working at all now. Oh, yeah, my bad. So 1, 2. Keep going with your question, Mel. I don't quite understand it, please. Class name? Yeah, okay. Where's my... Oh, it's grid container. If your viewport shrinks and the other items squish the P element, it will keep shrinking until it overflows. Maybe you never want it to overflow, but you also don't want it to hide the content. Yeah. You want the shrink to stop when the content can no longer be contained if it does. I don't know if there's a solution to that, to be honest. But I think the problem is that you're thinking of the grid as something that can be resized by its items, when you should really be thinking of the grid as something that dictates the size of its items. The grid tells the items how big to be, not the item telling the grid how big to be. Does that make sense? Like Synax said, you can't accessibility ad infinitum. Now, I don't know what word you would have. Like, listen, if you want to have supercalifragilisticexpialidocious, you can. But in that case, I would make it horizontally scrollable. Oh, I like this. Think of it more of a flex thing. Flex is changing according to the content, whereas grid is what you make first and then fill the content. That's so good. Maybe you should teach. Okay, we are super behind, folks. What was I doing? Oh yeah, min-max. 1 FR, 200 pixels. 1 FR, 1 FR. You'd use flex containers in grid. Yes, you totally can, because remember, they're different things. Okay. There's my grid. What happened to my grid? Okay. Grid. It's misspelled? Oh, shoot. How do you do min-max? Min-max. Oh, y'all were saying it can't be bigger. Edda, you were right all along. I'm sorry. Oopsie. So. There we go. Ah, awesome. Yes. So, minimum of 100 pixels, maximum of 200. Whew. That makes sense. Sorry, everyone. But yeah, so please reiterate for the rest of us again. What am I reiterating? Min-max lets you specify a minimum and a maximum size of a dimension. So 1 FR. So the first column. Yeah, so look at this. Okay. The minimum is 1 fraction and the maximum is 100 pixels. That is invalid CSS because 1 fraction can be bigger than 100 pixels. You need to set the minimum to be the lowest end, and you need the maximum to be the highest end. But since 1 fraction can be bigger than 100 pixels, that's invalid CSS. Use your dev tools. Exactly. 1 fraction is dynamic. Okay, let's blaze through these questions. No, Mel. 1 FR can be bigger, but it's still the min-max, right? So remember, 1 is the lowest end, 1 is the biggest end. Hang on. Look. Exactly, the keyword is can be. So check this out. Anywhere between 100 pixels and 1 fraction. So the lowest end is 100, the highest end is 1 fraction. Now we inverse. Lowest end is 1 fraction. What is that? The highest end is 100 pixels. So don't use fractions in the minimum. That's it. Unless you want to have 1 FR. Does this work? This should work, right? No, it doesn't. we can actually look at the error here, right? Invalid property value. So on this end, always what is it called? An absolute value. So which function do we use to define the range for a size? Min-max. I'm sorry, I'm going to do these for us because we are way out of time. Which of the following best describes how the grid track size behaves when using the min-max function? Grid size is fixed between the minimum and maximum values. The grid track size adjusts dynamically between the min and max values based on the content and container size. This sounds correct to me. Grid track size will always be set to the maximum value regardless of content. Grid track size only responds to content, not container size. No, that doesn't have anything to do. So what does the min and max value function control? Min value allows shrinking. The max value sets a fixed size. Min value ensures the grid track won't shrink below a set size. Limits how large it can grow. That sounds right to me. Min value limits growth. Max value determines the smallest size. Both values set fixed sizes for the grid track. Nope. Yes. All right. 2 more, folks. Pat. Let's keep going. What do we got? Oh, hang on. Because we are 10 minutes over time. What are we doing tomorrow? I'm tempted to let us go today because we're about to go in more explicit, more determining the size of stuff. So for tomorrow, we need to do debugging. Yeah. Okay. I'm sorry, everyone. I really don't want to take us too much over time. So I am going to stop here for today. But I promise tomorrow we're going to continue with this and allow more time for questions. Thank you so much for bearing with me. It's been a lot today. So we did some dev tools today. With me, you always do dev tools. I love dev tools. Yeah, I think I'm going to call it for today. Bring questions tomorrow. Mel, I expect a list like last time. I'm kidding. I love it. Thank you for bearing with us. No, thank you for bearing with me. I'm such an agent of chaos, and y'all are so wonderful. Yeah, I just don't want to overwhelm you all today. And I feel like what we're going to be doing tomorrow is an extension, and we're going to be okay. No list when it's so hot. Fair enough. Well, I hope you all have a cooler day tomorrow or a warmer day if you're cold. Yeah, let's go get some rest and come back at this tomorrow. Wish you all the best, everybody. I had fun. Take care and bye for now.